development initiatives. And then finally, Linda Weatherman. Linda is a Florida native, is the president and CEO of the Economic Development Commission of Florida's Space Coast. Linda's been there long enough to know what the Space Coast was like, what the economy was like with the shuttle program and the success of the space program, right? And what life is like now from an economic development perspective post the termination of the space shuttle program. So we're very interested in your comments. What we've asked this panel to do is just spend 3-4 minutes speaking from their own perspective about the things that they're involved with as it relates to economic development, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. So Tony, you want to get us started?
Can I use that mic? So last week I had a beautiful performance where I fell off the stage, so I don't move around very much. And there are enough of you in here who saw me do that. So thank you. I'm with the Florida Chamber Foundation as part of the entire Florida Chamber enterprise focused on securing Florida's future. Bert and I challenged each other to be under 5 minutes. I'm hoping that he's better at keeping the challenge than I am. I'm going to share a few reflections on what I heard from Todd and Richard, tie them into some general comments, and then pass this on as quickly as we can because we do want to get into some questions. So I really love the notion of focusing on human capital as part of the model, and I enjoy the perspective of shared vision and the partnerships as a big part of success. Not just civic success or community success, but success, period. Here are some of my comments that I'm going to try and rattle off, and hopefully if you want to challenge me, please do so when we get to some of the questions. We must take a more robust look at the business sector. We must think of them a little bit differently. They are more than just sponsors. I heard somebody mention today that without the business community we wouldn't have X. I think it was a particular event that they were talking about. But it's much more than that. The business community is absolutely a part of the entire civic and community structure. And we can't just look at them monolithically and say it's only about dollars. I'll come back to that in just a second. They need to be part of every solution, and Todd pointed to that in his comments. It's amazing how often we actually see situations, for example, not to point to Florida's workforce system because we actually do pretty well in coordinating, but System X not talking to the business community. We've got to get past that. And why? The second key point that I want to make. We are codependent. We are part of the community. There is no economic progress without a healthy community. There is no healthy community without economic progress. Quality of life and quality places really drive success. If nothing else, turn to the human capital point again. Remember, before, so some of us, potentially, when we graduated, were looking for jobs and we would consider a place to go work. We would say, that's the company or that's the community that I want to run my career at. With a mobile population like we have now, a flat world, basically that's not even the choice. People make the decision of where I want to go. So the robustness of a community really makes a decision for the talent pipeline. It makes the decision from the retention and the attraction. We are part and fully reliant on the community, and we want to be part of it. We do care. At the end of the day, behind every business is a person. We can't ignore that fact that these people also want the best schools, the best communities, the best civic engagement, the best government. It is not simply a bottom line or a paycheck that they can possibly realize. Jumping to a comment that Suzanne, I think, made yesterday about champions. Florida has moved forward a lot of times by people who are larger than life. Names like Flagler, Tuttle, Disney, Askew, who have really made differences all along. But it is also Maria and Pedro who own the small businesses. It's folks like Lila who open shops. 4 out of 5 businesses in Florida are very small businesses. While they work countless hours in their own facility, by the way, when they leave, whenever they do leave, they are part of the community infrastructure. I'll end with a few comments about brutal facts, because here I think we'll turn to what Richard was talking about. Data and transparency is a big part of community performance. And I have 4 points that I want to make here. Too often, even in the conversations that we've had over the last 2 days, we who are most enlightened think that we're talking about the question of what do we want for our community, when we are still asking the question, how do we get people to do what we want? how do we get businesses to give more money? How do we get millennials to show up to our meetings? Where the reality is we've got to change the question to some degree. Second point, we have way too many challenges. There is no way that we can address all of them. But we can focus and individually tackle as many as we possibly can. And Clarence really pointed to that point, that fact. What we've got to do as communities, what we've got to do as individuals, is learn how to focus our energies. One of the things that the Florida Chamber Foundation has been focusing on is strategic philanthropy. The idea that we get knocked on our door every single day for a $100 contribution here, a $1,000 contribution here, a $10,000 contribution there. But what if we focused all those dollars? The third point, we've got to have a new mix of funding. Since we started this conference with a question, let me throw out my own question. Where do you currently get all the money to address your issues? You may think that you know the answer, but I'm going to give you something that I hope that we can discuss. Every single dollar to address whatever challenge you're dealing with comes from a business owner. Whether it came from an individual kid, a sponsorship, a philanthropy who was started by the economy that grew and was able to bank it at some point, or taxation. It came from a job somewhere. And we've got to recognize that a robust economy is the only way to solve our solutions over the long term. And finally, we've got to have better invitations. Clarence Anthony made a quip about how he was invited to serve on too many boards simply because I think he was alluding to the fact of the color of his skin. It could have been that he had no hair. I don't know what it was, but too often I'm invited to a particular place because, you know, the title behind my name says the Florida Chamber Foundation. And really what they're saying is, well, we want them to advocate for us or give us money or do something like that. Your community partners throughout the state are looking for better invitations. The same way that we wouldn't make a shallow invitation to somebody in any part of the community, we shouldn't do that with the businesses. I look forward to talking about focusing the conversations, engaging the business communities, and particularly the 6 pillars, which I didn't set Carl up well enough, but he'll talk about briefly.
Good afternoon, Bert DeArmas. I'm with Sabadell Bank. I'm also of the FCRC. And I'm the guy keeping us from a 4-hour car ride, so I'm going to be here. I've been a banker in Miami for 33 years. I grew up there. I sort of have the same kind of immigrant experience that Lila talked about yesterday. And I also send you greetings from Miami, where we may not be Minneapolis, but we're certainly warmer and nicer beaches. Miami's a great place to be. When was the last time any of you were down? Well, it's changed from when you were there. Guaranteed. There are 380 buildings going up right now. From the corner of my office, from around the corner, I can count 18 cranes. There's a small little building going up next to us on a 1.7 acre site. We're on the top floor, 30th floor of a building. Small little building, 83 stories. We'll be able to look into the parking lot probably. Incredible amount of growth. A lot of this money is coming from overseas. But as you know, I always tell people the best thing about Miami, it is so close to the United States. I drove up yesterday from the city-state of Miami, and you know, half hour later, half hour up on 95, and you know, there I am. I'm in the United States. But when you leave Miami, I live very close to downtown. When you leave Miami, you look to your right, you see all these great buildings, and all this fabulous skyline that's being built, and changing every minute. And then you look to your left, and that's not happening over there. And that's where what Todd was talking about. And how do we get that? How do we get that prosperity across that road? How do those folks? How do folks in general develop it and thrive in South Florida? And so we're talking about prosperity. I want to talk about just a few things. There's a book written by Jim Clifton about entrepreneurship and development of entrepreneurs. Some statistics, up until 2008, the United States was creating about 100,000 new businesses more than they were losing. So it's about 500,000 businesses every year, 400,000 were being closed. Since 2008, when he wrote the book last year, that number got inversed and we were losing about 70,000 to 100,000 businesses a year. That can't happen. We got to get that up again. So we have entrepreneurs creating jobs, because those are the jobs that pay the taxes, that then, you know, so that funds the schools and funds all the programs that we're going to benefit from. So, best practices that are going on in Miami right now. Just a few things. I'm a member of the University of Miami Citizens Board. The University of Miami Citizens Board has a thing called a launch pad. which is an entrepreneurial sort of clearinghouse for ideas from the students, from faculty. They started in 2008, they've entertained over 2,000 ideas already. The whole thing is, it's interesting. You'd think it'd be run by the business school. It's not. It's run by the replacement. And the fellow that runs it is a philosophy professor. His idea, his premise is that religion was really the entrepreneurship of the past. You know, developing ideas as a religious idea was the entrepreneurship of the past. Just a couple of statistics. I think they've created over 800 jobs in these last few years. There's like 234 new businesses that have arisen because of the of Launchpad. Two real brief examples. Husband and wife music students out of Frost School of Music created and through the thinking, and it's a Socratic method, Socratic process where they go through and if you really think about what ought to be in your business, they created a new music school and a new music shop. So you get from that, you know, something as basic as that to a fellow who had a career in selling high-end medical equipment, MRIs and all these very gamma knives and things like that, where he created a business out of better utilization out of these very, very expensive machinery. So that's the kind of thing that the university is doing. That can be replicated all throughout different universities. Next, 1st of May, there is a program called Emerge Americas. It's a conference that's happening in Miami, but it's all about technology and about bringing technology, really not just South Florida, but to Florida. Miami is the 5th best connected city in the world. And it has to do a lot with the NAP, Network Area Processing Center. If you think of the information superhighway, right? Well, the turnpike ends in Miami. That goes all the way to South America. And the fellow that developed that was a guy named Manny Medina. Manny sold that company for a very large sum of money. Did very well for himself. And he's now backing this idea of creating this conference, this computer conference that happens on the beach. Last year was the first year they had it. It's 6,000 participants. This year they're expecting 10,000 participants. You're bringing all sorts of players together, so you're creating sort of this cluster of technology. There are 250,000 people in the state of Florida that are employed in technology. Over 26,000 different companies. In South Florida, there are 1,500 companies, 7,000 employees. The average pay is $90,000. That's where these kids that Commissioner Williamson was talking about, that's where these kids can get jobs. Those are the jobs that drive the future for us. So I urge you to look up Emerge, because there'll be a lot of folks that are coming in. Just from last year, there have been 3 new venture capital firms that have opened up offices in Miami. So that's the second thing that's happening that's going to grow the economy and grow it across the state. Last thing I want to talk to you about is a project that is started that is now run in conjunction with the Miami-Dade Community College. It's the 10,000 Small Businesses. It's a program that was started by Goldman Sachs, the Goldman Sachs Foundation. They partnered up with Babson College, and they've created basically a mini MBA course for entrepreneurs, people that already own their own businesses. So you have to be in business for over 2 years. You have to have sales of 150,000 to 4 million. You have to have 4 employees, 4 or more employees, and the owner could be one of the employees. If it's a free program taught by Babson or folks that they've taught to teach the program, it's a fairly condensed program, and you got to devote a lot of time to it. There's a lot of work to it, but at the end of that I don't know if it's a 10-week process, 12-week process, these folks end up with a business plan, and it's a business plan that's well thought out, well designed. They come to folks like me and folks like the SBA and other lenders and participate in both an equity and cap and debt. The first graduating class of this, there were 3 segments of it, graduated just a few weeks ago. There were 73 graduates. The first component of those 73, there were 18 folks that went through that program. The top 10 of those 18 have already created 100 jobs. That thing is very, very powerful. And it's, as I said, it's run by Goldman Sachs. There's one in Miami, then the other one, the nearest one, and that's the 13th. The other nearest one is in New Orleans. There's no reason why a state like Florida shouldn't have 3 or 4 of those bad boys. You know, that's where we need to focus in our time and energy, because again, and we said before, those are the things that are going to drive the future and allow everything else for us to be Civic, you know, it's a lot easier for us to do that when we're well fed and well housed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert.
Thank you very much, and I think I could talk quicker than that. I'm going to be brief. How many know your EDO, when I refer to an economic development organization, are familiar with it? Okay, this may or may not help, but if anything, I'll be talking a little bit about hopefully something you can take back, because each one of us have a different perspective. I have a paper here. It's just serendipity. I had it in my briefcase when I was preparing last night, and it says Shifting Workforce Development into High Gear, How Economic Developers Lead Workforce System Alignment. So it is topical even in my industry right now. And it says this: for economic developers, the nationwide mismatch between jobs and worker translates into business attraction, retention, and expansion issues. Communities without a talented workforce cannot compete when the most important factor in company relocation or retention is human talent. This is a game changer for economic developments. Tools such as tax incentives and utility or land deals are no longer enough to entice businesses. And that's what's scaring every economic developer to death. Because what we're asked to respond to is something we're not trained to do. And in this article, it sounds really good, but it reflects one of Todd's lessons learned. Talk is cheap. So what does an EDO do when traditionally we work on the demand side, not the supply side? And what I would tell you is first you better have an EDC that is, well, we're doing something in workforce development. That's because we're crazy, maybe we're maniacs. And this is what I think we can do. Because remember, the article said lead in economic development. The challenges that EDCs have is we have all the responsibility and no authority. Yet that's where our talents lie. Because when a company goes to relocate, what do? You manage the assets of the community. I've got to get the airport to renegotiate the lease. They don't work. None of these people work for me. I got to get incentives passed. I got to get a land deal. I got the workforce board to put some training. I got to go to DEO and make sure they give them good, proper incentive. Now I got to call them back and beg or threaten or cry or do something. Okay. So if we take those same kind of talents, if you will, on a workforce delivery system, you can do something about it. I think you can because you work with the workforce boards and you also work every day with the manufacturers who call me every day and complain about not getting workforce. So there's something the EDC is doing, and it certainly could go into an hour discussion, but I'll be brief, and then I'll talk about why I think EDOs or smart EDOs better do something about it quickly. Number one, the EDC is doing two things. Number one, we're pushing a program, and we talk about money, we're doing this with absolutely no money. That's okay, because I got this. And I got a lot of economic developers who are watching closely what we're doing, but a lot of manufacturers that are supporting this. Here's what we're doing, two things. Number one, we're promoting, when I talk about this particular area of workforce, if you reference to the Heritage Foundation called the Hidden STEM Economy, I'm not talking about the 4-year plus colleges, okay, the software engineers. There's a lot of smart people out there doing something about that. I'm talking about the one that tends to be overlooked, the certification-driven 2-year programs. Thank you very much, thank you. And let me explain what that is. Basically, it's the line operators, the CNC machinists, the welders, okay? How do we create welders, or welders are going to be blueprints in the future? And I believe you can do that. None of this is new, okay? I'm an Abraham Lincoln of workforce development. I read it and I just, what can we do about that? So what I say is we're going to develop, the EDC is going to develop a schematic to show a pathway to go from novice to expert in manufacturing sub-4-year degrees. And these people, and these will pay more money. And part of, I'm making a big deal of showing the schematic is because the same way a student who doesn't go on to high school might work at Best Buy because they walk into Best Buy, they see the cashier and they go, I want to be that manager, because they see it. And because we don't have a legacy of people working in manufacturing, we also have this very archaic vision of what manufacturing is, very Norma Ray and stuff like that. Remember all of us? I mean, is there a press in here? There's no press in here. Okay. We have the Norma Ray in mind who come from Tampa. I have the uncle with the bad hand from the cigar factory who wants to, un posita linda at Christmas. You're like, oh. So that's your vision. I'm joking, but it's true. That's your vision of what manufacturing is. So we have so much to challenge. So concurrently with developing the stackable certification from novice to expert, and the only equivalent I can give you is think of a CNA. Someone starts a CNA, and they're bright and they're ambitious. They're not going to be a CNA all their life. But they know, CNA, I could be an LP, I could be an RN, and I could be a surgical nurse. That's the pathway we need to serve. So basically, a stackable that will fan out. Because you're not going to have these CNC machines or these welders to drop out of the sky. They're not going to. So that's what we're pushing. And I won't even begin to tell you the challenges we're getting. And we are our motives are completely just as simple and pure as they could be. Second, we're going to do an image and attraction campaign. I'll find the money later on how to do this. The image and attraction campaign, as I told my board of directors, gave me 1 year to make something happen because this is outside our normal course of work, is we're going to take a playbook from the U.S. Army. And what happened in the U.S. Army said, no one wanted to get in the Army. But what did they do? They made it noble and exciting and sexy, some would say. And also, you're going to improve yourself. You give something, you'll come out a better person. We can make those claims. Everything in going into manufacturing. And all I have to tell you is go look up the M&M commercial about Chrysler in Detroit. When you're through, you want to do it. Now this won't mean anything to you, but this is what I would tell my economic development practitioners. 2 reasons you better get involved in the workforce. And you better define it simply because everyone else is going to get the shackles up. I made a presentation to my workforce board. I'm on the workforce board. I didn't get one question. That was sending me a message, okay? But here's the reason why EDO needs to get involved. Number one is that what's going on in our environment is that when we talk about the civic collaboration and people talking, is everybody wants jobs. And the pressure on me daily is to bring jobs in. The pressure on me is not to use incentives. So the patience with deal making is quickly going away. As I told somebody in a board meeting once, I guess I should shut my mouth some time ago. Yeah, everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die. You know, if you want jobs, that's what it takes. Number one. So that's the pressure, which tells me EDOs need to find other offerings, but the tools we've been given has been strictly for deal making. So you've got to find something different. And I think a case for bringing manufacturing and attraction of going into that field is a good and noble case. And it's almost counter that, yeah, we're making deals in the back room. Number two, here's it, really quick, and I'll be brief. I think it might be able to tell one quick story. Forgive me, I like to tell stories. I saw that movie Lincoln, and I thought, have you ever seen the movie Lincoln? Every time you ask me a question, told the story, I go, God, that's annoying. Then I thought, I do that all the time. So here's my quick story. One of the things EDOs do is you work with site location consultants. They're in Chicago, they're in Atlanta, they're in New York. And I've met with site location consultants along with my partners, because we don't go there individually, we go there together to Tampa and Pensacola and Miami and stuff like that. And I've been in this business a long, long time. Okay? We've been asking this question a long, long time. And about 2 years ago, this is when it hit home for me. Now you understand, these people are deal makers, and they could care less. I mean, they really do. They care less. They just want to make a job, they want to find the best site. And when you get down to 2 or 3 sites, every site would work, so that's when they squeeze you, okay? And when you work with them, you just try it. But they're deal making, and you gotta make a deal. Again, all responsibility, no authority. And I'm sitting there, and we're asking a question, and then, you know, we're there, New York City, in Times Square, you see out there, and wherever, the Central Rockefeller Center. And the question was asked by one of my colleagues. Now, I've heard this question for 15, 20 years. What is it that the EDCs in the state of Florida can do to bring more companies to your attention? Now, they've always said incentives, and they're right. You need money. Florida has always been slow. We've always, for years, based on cheap taxes and nice cheap labor and sunshine. And those days are gone. Now, he asked this question, this 2 years ago. And when he asked this question, I thought, I need to get cat food when I get home. And did I make those bananas up? Did I throw it? You know why? Because I've heard the answer for 15 years. You know what the answer was this time? Workforce. So here's what told me from the mouth of, the devil. He said this, look, kids, if you don't start getting your workforce system in order, I'm not going to be able to relocate any companies. And if I don't relocate any companies, I'm not making any money. Now that's the lesson every EDO should have walked out of there with that. So we're doing something, I'm not going to begin to tell you some of the challenges I'm facing, and it has nothing to do with the Florida public schools, it has nothing to do with the community college, it has nothing to do with the industries, because they're very supportive of this. But we're going to start a very small role. It's not the answer, I think it's a answer, in addition to the image attraction of manufacturing. Thank you.
Carl's comments, I hope that you guys are writing down your questions, because I am going to go table by table and see what questions we've got from the audience. Carl.
Hi, I'm Carl. afternoon, and thanks for having me here. I'm from the Department of Economic Opportunity, and a certain amount of my time is spent on competitive projects, and that is part of the world that we live in, and Linda, you were referring to it, and so businesses do, there are choices to be made about where you're going to invest your capital and create your jobs, and yes, we want to be competitive in that environment and have a top business climate and be working well with each other all the way from the local level all the way through the state level so that we can have reasonable and good interactions with businesses as they're trying to make those choices. So that's part of it. But today I want to talk a little bit more about engagement and how we can work together and some of the language behind that. And one of the things that I've seen in my work is that there are a lot of entities and organizations that are interested in Florida's future economy and have a role in it. From the state to county government to municipalities to public-private partnerships to regional organizations to nonprofits. And we're all trying to advance Florida's future, to have that high quality of life. And one of the things that has resonated with me is trying to develop a common language so that when we are working together, we can advance the ball with some understanding. And Tony had alluded to the 6 pillars which the Chamber Foundation worked on, and DEO has in fact incorporated that into our strategic plan for economic development. And just as a quick survey, have people heard about the 6 pillars? Many people have, and that is awesome. That means I think we're moving the ball down the court, and one of the pillars, to Linda's point, is certainly talent supply. So I think these really address the areas. So what I would say is, if you haven't, and haven't already seen our strategic plan, it's the Oscars, and I'd like to thank, and call your parents. That's from last night. So we are interested in the way that we work all the way through all these entities that are interested in the same thing and using that common language with you. We would love to come out and talk to you about our strategic plan, the way the pillars work, and helping you think about those same issues, those pillars that are supporting our future, and the common language around that. So I will put that offer out to you. At any time, anywhere, I would love to come and talk to you about that if you want to engage on that level. Information is available at DEO's website as well. It's floridajobs.org. So another thing that I wanted to bring up is just a specific way in which we are thinking about engaging with local communities. And there's a program out there called the Competitive Florida Partnership. And this program is about working with typically smaller communities on what is their vision for economic development for their community. Do they have that vision? Have they thought about it? And basically aligning technical assistance and potentially resources to help them implement their plan. So it kind of works like this. If you're interested, and thus far we've had 4 communities that have gone through it, including Port St. Joe and White Springs and Newberry and DeSoto County, is we go and listen and see where are you at. If you have your vision and your plan already put together, we can help answer the question, how can we help you implement it? If you don't have your vision together, we can work with you to develop that vision. And so that vision is typically more than just locating and retaining businesses. That's part of it. But it's also a more holistic look, including mapping the assets. Do you have a real good understanding about that? What is your sense of place? Where's your community leadership? What kind of branding are you doing? And a number of other things that go into that. So I wanted to say too, I'm gonna point her out right now. Julie Dennis is in the house from DEO. She administers the program. Raise your hand. We have a fresh round of applicants coming in, 6 more, right? So we're really excited about this idea, and it's interesting that the word competitive is in the title, and from my perspective, This is a competitive time for retaining your talent, for retaining business opportunities, and people and businesses have choices. So thinking intentionally, we heard about that today, strategically about how we're competitive is very important. I think there's some literature on the back table as well. Good. If I said anything wrong, just pretend I didn't. But I think I got it right. And one last thing that I'd like to throw out to you is some of the issues that come up with businesses that are looking to work in your community is they have to try to navigate and work with the state. And I apologize for that because sometimes that can be hard. So one of the things that my office is interested in and actually help coordinate is what we call economic development liaisons. So if you have issues locally where you're trying to engage with the state, or maybe you have to engage with multiple state entities and need help with introductions with trying to speed the plow, you can call me at any time and I'd be happy to facilitate those discussions. I have contacts at the other state entities where I can say, hey, this one's come to my attention, can you please provide good customer service to your business client? And they are interested in doing that. They want to move that ball forward. And that's another way that from your local experience all the way up to the state, we need to be good at it. We need to work, I'll use the cliche, at the speed of business so that we're helping them make their decisions. With the sense of being sensitive to time, I'll just cut it off there, but just to say, I look forward to meeting you and having further conversations in the hallway or coming and visiting you anytime.
Okay, who's got the first question? Please, go ahead. You want to go up to Louis
Hi, this is more a comment than a question. And I know, based on what the state's products have been for the past 4 years, we definitely want to increase manufacturing. We're not a traditional manufacturing state that's a paint for Brevard, state Brevard outside, because Brevard is completely different. As somebody who's like in economic development, one of the frustrating parts for me has been that people say we want more manufacturing, but we don't say what type of manufacturing we want. Manufacturing encompasses everything from baking bread all the way to launching satellites. So that's the first thing. And we have to come from the understanding that Florida is a very large state. Not all our regions are going to be good at every little part of manufacturing. I'm very glad that Ms. Wilderman brought the whole thing with the CNC machinists. Right now, we're like really, we want more engineers. Guess what? If you don't have the machine shops, we're going to make the custom parts. You're not going to have any manufacturing. So I just want to see the comments from the panel about that.
You know, getting companies, there's a reason we go after manufacturing companies and we'll go say that, but I really think this is how areas that may not have a manufacturing base, because now, you know, I was just talking to somebody before, they're not here, Andrew County, oh no, they're in another meeting earlier, and I'm thinking, how do you do economic development in a small rural county? I truly think if you start developing what's called certified production technicians, and your goal is to have 200 welders, then I would put an ad when you're through in the Wall Street Journal, and you'll get a company to start tracking. I mean, I truly think that's the future of economic development. Other than that, you're just like, and we're just like any other community, and there's 5,000 EDCs chasing less than 300 announcements annually. So last I stopped, that will set you apart. So anyway, I hope that helps.
I'll speak briefly about this and try to wrap it around the engagement conversation. So a lot of the push is because of global trade flows. One of the things that, I'm not sure if you know this, the #1 export in Florida, do you know what it is? Air. Most of our containers leave empty, be those on ships, be those on trains or trucks. And we know that we've got to backfill that process or we will never become a global leader. A longer part of the manufacturing answer is what's going on globally. Urbanization of 750 million Chinese means that they are going to have their own consumer market, and everything that basically we have been consuming for the last 20 or 30 years is going to stay on that side of Asia. There are new markets, Africa, the European countries, and even the South American countries. There are going to be changes, and there are new technologies in manufacturing. So the reality is that we're in a new place. We are at the cusp of a new place, and we have as much advantage. The question is, how does your community engage in that conversation? The same way they have to have the conversation of what do we want for our schools? What do we want for our community? What do we want down the street? How do we engage? It's the same kind of conversation that they have to have about economic development. They cannot let Linda make a presentation and not have a question about what we want for our future. Because the businesses that are looking to relocate is one market, by the way. The other market is what can grow naturally in the communities that you have. How do you leverage both the rich and the poor communities to find out what assets they have? How do you mine the talents, the capacities, the interests, the passions? And here, that same language can be used for community engagement as you can for economic development. And we've heard answers on that, and that's invitations and conversations and collaboration. So thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Sarah Hand, and I'm from the Sarasota-Bradenton area, which I really value Linda's comment because we had another bright person in economic development come in and say that we should just stick to tourism dollars because that's where our best return on investment is. Forget advanced manufacturing, forget life science. What I'd like you guys to speak to is the problem with PR because we have lots of advanced manufacturing companies where we're at. We have the most vibrant and growing BioFlorida chapter in the state. And so what we see is that we're rich in assets, not just beaches, and that the rest of the world thinks that we're just a place to vacation. I know Enterprise Florida is doing some great things with that, but they don't have the type of funding that some of the other states do. So could you talk to that PR challenge about who we are and who people think we are?
Is that yours, Carl? I think that's yours, Carl.
Yes, I think you're right. So I think Florida does need to tell its story, and tourism is going to continue to be very important to Florida, as is other industries in ag and defense. But there are opportunities for far-reaching diversification. This is a place where you can come and have advanced manufacturing and corporate headquarters and financial and professional services. So, basically we have requested funds to help tell the story so that people think about Florida as a place either to locate or expand in those different industries. And I think that's important. And there are states are doing this. I see countless commercials from New York and from Michigan all day long. And certainly our ads will be out of the Florida market. But I think that's important to tell our story, and marketing is important. I would concur with that.
So I sense that we still could come up with additional questions. We have to end here, but here's what I would leave you with. If we continue to have questions and we continue to have dialogue, it means that if we put our heads together, we can work towards solutions. We also heard yesterday that civic engagement is not unrelated to economic development, right? And so would you please join me in thanking these 4 people? A call to action to stay engaged on these issues, and hopefully you support the FCRC as they continue to have the dialogue for years to come and work with you all toward the solutions. Thanks for staying engaged in this panel.